The other big challenge is that it went to a sliding scale based on carbon intensity. And this is where Canadian canola producers really took a kick in the shorts. And that's because it's based on carbon intensity. You have to have a carbon intensity that is below 50. I can't remember the exact units. Canola is barely above that threshold. So canola oil was not receiving any 45Z credit whatsoever. Soybean oil receiving like 1/3 of the credit that it had previously received under the blender's tax credit of $1.
Okay.
Major changes, big issues there. Definitely it gives preference to waste feedstocks. So like used cooking oil or tallow. So the kicker was 45Z. One thing they did that was a good thing for US and even, like canola is a feedstock, is the US said, we can't verify if used cooking oil coming into our country is actually used. So we're not going to give any credit at all. So they decided no credits for UCO. So back in mid-May, so it's been righted a month ago, the House version of the big, beautiful bill, which includes amendments to 45Z, came out. So there were 3 big things that were changes there. So one, it said we're removing the ILUC penalty, which is indirect land use change. So that is a penalty that essentially dings any crop-based feedstock for any deforestation that would happen worldwide. So for instance, what's happening in Brazil gets the rest of us take the fall for it as well. So that was really one of the big things that hurts canola the most. It also hurts soybean oil. So removal of that added about 20 cents of premium to the credit. And so that puts canola back on the map. The other big thing with the House version was that they restricted it to North American only feedstocks. So that also puts canola oil back in the game in a big way. It's also a huge boost for soybean oil. So what it did was it was able to take canola oil to a point where it's actually receiving a credit. And then on soybean oil, it gets it much closer to the credit that would be received for domestic used cooking oil or any tallow, either domestic or imported. Now, here comes the fun part. This is what came out late yesterday. So now that bill is in the Senate, and the Senate has done its first kind of look through and proposal now that it will be voting on. And in that bill, we had a few different changes. So the biggest thing is that it said, oh, okay, you know what? We're not going to restrict it just to North American only feedstocks. We're going to remove that barrier, but instead we're going to say any feedstock that is imported only gets 80% of the available credit. So it doesn't matter if it's canola oil coming from Canada or tallow coming from Brazil. It's allowed in the program, but you're only receiving 80% of the available credit. So to give you an example here, under the House version, canola oil coming from Canada would have been 22 cents or something. And now, since under the Senate's proposed version, it would only be 18 cents.
Okay.
For kind of reference, US soybean oil going into biodiesel or renewable diesel is going to be in the low 50s is what it's qualifying for per gallon in this production tax credit. Distillers corn oil, it receives the highest credit. It's in that nearly 80 cent area. And then when you look at US tallow or used cooking oil, it's closer to 70 cents. The big thing here is that now with the way that this is worded, it opens up the doors for used cooking oil imports again, but those also, they'll only qualify for 80%. Used cooking oil and imported tallow, they're going to be somewhere that are in the, I would call it mid 50s. So again, we're comparing this to soybean oil that's kind of in the low 50 cents per gallon. So it's so messy and it's so complicated. And the fact that we had both of these things within a matter of days of each other is just, that's probably why I feel like I can't put a sentence together that makes any sense.
Yeah, or you put something out on social or in your reporting and it changes not long after. So
yeah, I swear, I feel like here lately I have this incredible knack. Like I click send and then automatically it's like, oh, okay, that's outdated. That was wrong.
So like it's important, I think, for the listeners to just separate the two out. Like these are two different events going on. Both have major implications. And I've seen like messaging around, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't know if it's the big beautiful bill that's a huge positive game changer for US farmers, like a big I don't know, like a lot of positive messaging around, this is what we were looking for. Maybe it's the EPA side that's, maybe I'm getting that wrong, but like that this is kind of the next from a financial frontier, like this is so positive for moving forward. Like, what am I reading that right, or where am I off on that one?
I wouldn't say that you're off. I think that one thing that's important to note is that the EPA mentioned farmers 7 times, and we'll call it hundreds of pages of this particular RFS proposal or this RVO proposal for 2026 and 27. American energy independence is also mentioned, but the big thing in the EPA RFS proposal is they specifically mentioned like US farmer incomes and supporting rural America. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's really important because it's instead of okay, we have this aid reserve for this trade war or whatever it may be. We know that USDA had this huge set aside potentially for farmers in 2025. And I feel like this is their way of saying we are going to support the American farmer. We're going to support it with domestic demand. And that's exactly what they did, because it's not only that we got this massive RVO, but it's that they made a very strong stand against imported fuels and fuels that are derived from imported feedstocks. So, but we're talking about two completely separate issues here. So you have RFS, that's this long-standing mandate where every year, 2 years, we receive this update that's saying we're inching up these whatever the required volume is for blending biofuels into petroleum supplies. And then on the other side of it, you have this tax legislation that's completely separate, 45Z, that's really changing the way that we are producing biofuels here in the US. And another thing that was a big piece of these proposed changes in 45Z legislation is that they kind of said, you know what, sustainable aviation fuel, I don't know that we care so much about you. It looks like they're proposing to change the credit structure there. So there's not quite as much incentive to do sustainable aviation fuel versus renewable diesel.
And that was a big one, right? That was kind of the ticket to really getting this demand going.
Yeah, well, I had a conference that was last year's theme was called Wheels Up, taking agriculture to new heights, which it is. It's a thing when you look globally. We have increasing mandates that, in the US, we had a goal. We didn't have an official mandate. But you have a lot of places where you have a mandate or you have very substantial goals. Of course, the EU is kind of the one leading the charge, but that's the next thing. I mean, we've been working on trying to make transportation fuels cleaner, road transportation fuels cleaner for a long time. Aviation is obviously the next step. I mean, the kicker is that it takes an incredible amount of energy to power a jet. And so when you're looking from the it's not nearly as efficient as and easy as going from petroleum road transportation fuel to something that's more bio-based or electric. It's not that, you're not playing the same game there. So
yeah,
it's really challenging. I don't know. Here in the US, we've had a substantial challenges in seeing sustainable aviation fuel production actually take off, no pun intended. And I don't know. I think that and you have to kind of go back to the RFS too. We're talking about road transportation fuels. There's nothing that's actually mandated as far as aviation goes at this point.